Richard Prosser. 5-minute call.
Mr Speaker. Mr Speaker, another year has passed and the Minister of Finance has delivered yet another budget, another bland helping of not very much. Mr Speaker, this budget will not go down in history as one of the great budgets. It won't be remembered in the same way as the black budget or the mother of all budgets. In fact, if the budget is remembered for anything, if it's remembered at all, it will be not for what is in it, but for what's not in it. It may go down in the history books as the great dull beige budget of 2015, Mr Speaker. And in terms of what's not in it, as far as the forestry sector is concerned, there really isn't much at all, Mr Speaker. Through the last term of Parliament, I had a flat down on Thornton Quay for when the House was in session, and it was just over the road from the stadium, and it overlooked the log loading docks, Mr Speaker. And every morning on my balcony over the oatmeal, I was confronted by the horrible sight of piles and piles of logs, North Island radiata, piling up, ready, waiting for the ships to take them away to China and Korea and other faraway places where they would be turned into things. And going out with those shiploads of logs, Mr Speaker, were shiploads of New Zealand forestry and sawmill jobs, and shiploads of the potential for value-added timber products coming out of New Zealand and adding to the economy. So I'm not there anymore, Mr Speaker. I've moved out to the Finance Minister's hometown of Karori, so I don't get that sight in my face every morning. But that doesn't mean the problem hasn't gone away. And as far as what this budget doesn't contain for the forestry sector, Mr Speaker, it's not going away anytime soon. Right. So the lack of any real commitment to forestry is one of the more disappointing aspects of this budget, Mr Speaker. And expenditure on the management of Crown forestry assets is expected to fall by around about $5 million on the actual versus the budgeted expense for 2014-15, and the appropriation for 2015-16 is down by another $15 million on that. And at the same time, the value of stumpage per cubic metre is budgeted to fall by about 15% over the next year. Indeed, Mr Speaker, the market report from the May 2015 edition of the Tree Grower magazine, which is the official journal of the New Zealand Farm Forestry Association, warns that the value of a cubic metre of softwood landed in China has fallen from $130 for a JAS, which is a Japanese agricultural standard cubic metre, in October last year, to about $100 in April, and is forecast to fall to $90 or below by the end of this month. Mr Speaker, the future for the New Zealand forestry sector and for exports from it is not in the form of logs. At present, there are around 5 million cubic metres of log infantry sitting on the Chinese wharves, and China has effectively stopped buying. Consequently, there's about 1 million cubic metres of radiata sitting on the docks in New Zealand, which effectively have no buyer. There's no market for them. New Zealand has been supplying around 60 to 65% of the softwood log imports into China, Mr Speaker, with the rest being made up by exports from the United States and Canada and a few from Russia. And I ask, Mr Speaker, what is this government doing within this budget to address this problem, and what incentives and what assistance is it offering the forestry sector and the wood processing sector? And the answer is nothing to very little. And there's the Primary Growth Partnership, of course, and there's a scheme within that program which is developing the steep land harvester, and that's a great thing, and we're all in favour of the PGP, Mr Speaker. It's a grand scheme, and it's a marvellous initiative, and New Zealand First fully supports it. We do have one beef, and that's that there's no provision for the retention of rights to the share in the IP that's generated by PGP projects. That goes with the private partner, and all too often that private partner is a foreign partner. But in other regards, the PGP is pure socialism, and we have every support for it. Quite surprising it's being promoted by a national government and that Labor don't seem to like it, but that's one of the vagaries of politics, I suppose.
1 minute.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My point with the steep land harvester is that while it's going to be a very good thing, what is the point in it if we haven't got a market for the trees that it's going to harvest and the wood products that can be made out of them, and more to the point, if we don't have the capacity to produce those wood products? Because the Tree Grower magazine tells us, Mr Speaker, that about 70% of the logs that China imports are used for making construction plywood. So the question that comes from that is that why would they be buying logs? Well, they're not building log cabins. If they're building log cabins, you can understand them, we're selling them logs. In fact, they're after plywood. So why are we not selling them plywood? And what is it that's in the budget to incentivise, to incentivise and to assist the forestry sector and the sawmill sector? Well, they don't want the logs for the logs. They want the logs for the things they can make out of them. The whole point of an intelligent economic program is that you sell the product that is worth the most. Listen and you may learn, sir. So the incentives are not there, Mr. Speaker, and this government is...
Sorry to interrupt the honourable member. His time has expired.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Thank you,
I
Mr.
call,
Speaker.